Grievous, originally named Kimen Jai Shilal, was a Kaleesh warlord who stood at 2.16 meters tall. He had red skin, golden eyes with slit pupils, and an elongated face with slitted nostrils and 4 spiky chin growths. Often he wore a Kaleesh mask made from the skull of a mumu, a dangerous predator from Kali, his homeworld, throughout his people's war with the Huk. Aspiring to lead the galaxy's largest military force and combat the Jedi, whom he saw as nearly unbeatable due to their Force abilities, Grievous became known as a great warrior and infamous warlord with numerous enemies. Following a gruesome shuttle crash and a decision to pursue a path of cybernetic enhancement, Grievous was transformed into a cybernetic warrior. His brain was altered by separatist engineers, resulting in increased intelligence, agility, and strength, and a deep-seated hatred for the Jedi due to Count Dooku's false claim that they were responsible for his condition. Grievous's new form resembled a mechanical skeleton, similar to armor, but with no room for flesh. In any meeting, his presence was powerful and intimidating. His cybernetic transformation included claw-like feet, arms that could separate into an additional set, and a skull-like Kaleesh mask specifically sculpted for his new body. His eyes peered through this mask, revealing his cyborg nature. Behind uranium teeth, his hoarse voice emerged from an ultrasonic vocabulator. Grievous hated political matters and saw his role in the Clone Wars as an opportunity to eliminate the Jedi Order and lead the separatist droid army, rather than serving Dooku's political ambitions. However, his obsession with eradicating the Jedi was seen by some in the Confederacy, such as General Cleve, as a distraction hindering his success in the war. Lacking a sense of humor, Grievous found killing to be a form of enjoyment, but prioritized his duties. Proud of his position within the separatist organization, he insisted on being called General and was referred to as My Lord by figures like Asajj Ventress and TV-94. Known for his cruelty and ruthlessness, Grievous was regarded as the separatists' best general. He was feared across the galaxy as a strategic genius and skilled hunter. After Count Dooku, the Republic saw General Grievous as the second biggest threat in the war. The Republic described him as a mechanical monstrosity playing on deep-seated droid anxieties. Moving from one disaster to another, Grievous was a symbol of terror, whether he was leading armies against entire worlds or engaging enemies in close combat. One of the most formidable and terrifying combatants of the Clone Wars, he was both a strategic mastermind and a battlefield nightmare. Even the Jedi, according to legend, shuddered at the mention of his name and feared facing him in battle, as none could match his relentlessness and determination. Behind Grievous's mask lies one of the era's most cunning military strategists, unafraid to retreat when faced with unfavorable odds. If outmatched, Grievous preferred brief skirmishes and constant withdrawals, understanding the importance of survival and regularly avoiding capture by the Republic. This tactic allowed him to live to fight another day, continuously frustrating Republic commanders who sought his capture or demise. Persuaded by the CIS's limited and unreliable resources, Grievous saw the necessity for a swift and dependable evacuation strategy, even in seemingly secure locations. He viewed withdrawal as a setback rather than a complete victory for the Republic. While he earned a reputation throughout the Republic and among Jedi for retreating when outnumbered, his immediate superiors admired his cautious choices and sharp tactical judgments. Alongside fellow commanders like Trench, Grievous was responsible for broader campaign objectives. His campaigns against the Galactic Republic posed a significant threat to the Jedi Order's existence. The brutal strategies he learned as a warlord forced the Jedi to lead clone troopers made through technological advancements. Despite recognizing the dangers to the Order, many on the Jedi Council were pressured by continuous incursions or losses to the Separatist leader. In the Battle of Alamas, Separatist leaders relied on Grievous for critical missions due to his nearly unblemished record and highly regarded tactical insight, which provided the Separatists with numerous victories. While Dooku managed state affairs, including military operations for the Confederacy of Independent Systems, General Grievous handled the logistics and tactics of its vast droid armies. Overseeing a large number of capable admirals and generals, he imposed better control over his forces, thanks to droid commanders who eliminated unauthorized thoughts and suggestions, from subordinates with internal strategic prowess. Only a few brilliant sentients, such as Admiral Trench, managed to stay in charge of offensive operations. Cold, calculating, vain, deceitful, and unconcerned with the rules of combat outlined by the Galactic Accord of Systems, Grievous's cruelty extended beyond the battlefield. Civilians and other non-combatants suffered as Grievous devastated entire populations. He exploited his foes' compassion by targeting civilians, forcing opponents to prioritize protecting innocents, while his troops focused on victory at any cost. The general was aware of the Jedi's soft spot for innocents and exploited their compassion, showing no concern for civilian casualties. Dooku considered Grievous a successful leader due to his ability to see the big picture. Grievous employed high-handed tactics such as using listening sites to ambush Republic fleets and attempting to invade Kamino to stop clone production. He despised being paired with other commanders and never took orders well, seeing it as an insult to his abilities as a leader and warrior. Although confident in his eventual victory, Grievous was also arrogant enough to ignore his subordinates' recommendations for caution. Throughout the war, he utilized his agile fleets to his advantage, disrupting the Republic with attacks on planets like Faline and Dorin. Unable to predict where the droid general would strike next, the Republic became distracted, leaving previously conquered worlds to fall under separatist control. Commanding the largest droid army ever created, Grievous's setbacks were often temporary. Despite suffering defeats, neither his nor Ventress's failures were serious enough to undermine Darth Sidious's plans, although both agents needed reminders that they were not irreplaceable. Grievous's reputation as a cunning wraith who swiftly and silently entered and exited conflicts was a valuable asset for the Confederacy of Independent Systems. His personal starfighter extended this reputation. Regularly commanding naval engagements from his flagship dreadnought, the Invisible Hand, Grievous demonstrated that his cybernetic enhancements did not diminish his tactical skills. His combat experience and brutality were most evident in hand-to-hand combat. Frequently seen leading his forces from the front lines, Grievous used his enhanced physical capabilities to crush all who opposed him, including Jedi. General Grievous was not only a ruthlessly brilliant strategist but also a deadly warrior in his own right. He actively participated in combat, often leading his droid forces from the front lines. His terrifying lightsaber skills and the strength and durability of his mechanical body were on full display as he challenged Jedi generals seeking to add their lightsabers to his collection. Despite his brutal hacking cough, which could be heard across the battlefield, Grievous proved to be an immensely formidable opponent, with his entire fast-moving physique best described as a living weapon. Grievous demonstrated that one need not possess force abilities to threaten even the greatest Jedi in combat. He believed himself to be a superior warrior to all Jedi and frequently sought to prove his prowess in battle. His mechanical limbs, which he deemed superior to all other foes, fueled his confidence. However, this arrogance blinded him to the limitations of his cybernetic enhancements compared to the capabilities of the Force. He replaced this lack of Force understanding with a desire for destruction, especially of powers he did not fully comprehend. Transforming his body into a fighting machine left Grievous's organic anatomy weak and vulnerable inside his armor. Grievous's hatred for the Jedi was well known throughout the galaxy, and he declared it on many occasions. A feared Jedi hunter, he was infamous for his brutality and ruthlessness, taking macabre pleasure in defeating Jedi on the battlefield and pursuing them relentlessly. Despite being a fearsome warrior, Grievous was quick to flee when the tide turned against him, often scuttling away to safety using all four limbs. This tactic worked until his final encounter with Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, with whom he shared a fierce rivalry. While the Jedi considered his tactics pitiful, Grievous held no notions of honor. Though Mace Windu and the Jedi Council branded Grievous a coward for his tendency to flee, the truth was that he was an unrelenting and experienced opponent who, despite not using the Force, defeated numerous foes. Kenobi could recognize the cyborg's mechanical cough anywhere. Grievous had a brooding, sarcastic personality and displayed signs of sadism, savoring every kill, including those of children, and enjoying the anguish of torturing his victims, which he even demonstrated in messages to the Jedi Council. He took great pleasure in using his victims' lightsabers in battle and wore them to intimidate his opponents. When Kenobi and Skywalker were brought into his custody on the invisible hand, Grievous would have smiled if it were possible for him. He had supreme confidence in his abilities and often displayed arrogance, believing himself to be untouchable. Grievous insisted on fighting Jedi personally whenever possible, even when injured, revealing a sense of recklessness and restlessness. This was evident when he ignored EVA-4D's advice to recuperate after his first bout with Kit Fisto and Nada Veb, and acted recklessly again when he fought Obi-Wan on Utapau, which ultimately led to his downfall. Grievous took great satisfaction in his expanding collection of war trophies from his victims. Starting from his time as a warlord on Kaylee, he amassed lightsabers from Jedi he had killed since the beginning of the war, along with other gruesome souvenirs like severed Padawan braids. By the end of the Clone Wars, he had nearly 100 lightsabers in his collection and was rumored to have captured or killed dozens of Jedi, including Jedi Master Nebo and the recently knighted Nada Veb. Fortunately, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi managed to avoid becoming part of Grievous's list of victims. Grievous maintained a somber trophy room in his hidden lair and carried many stolen lightsabers in the lining of his cape or on his waist. Though Grievous killed numerous Jedi during the Clone Wars, his most prized possessions were the lightsabers of Pablo Gil, Eth Koth, Roran Korob, and Shakti. Nada Veb's lightsaber briefly became part of his collection but was lost when Kit Fisto reclaimed it. At one point, Grievous acquired the lightsaber of Jedi Master Jamar. His viciousness extended beyond the Jedi. He personally killed Gungan General Tarpals on Naboo and massacred the Night Sisters of Dathomir, wiping out an entire clan of witches, including the oldest and wisest Night Sister, Old Daka. He ultimately eliminated one of the most powerful Night Sisters, Mother Talzin, who had survived his previous brutal assault on Dathomir. Despite his ruthless actions, Grievous remained loyal to his masters, Count Dooku and Darth Sidious, both of whom regarded him as nothing more than a useful tool in their plan for the Clone Wars. Grievous had minor clashes with Dooku but held great respect for the Confederacy's leader, who assisted in his training and whose orders he followed without hesitation. He shared his master's confidence, laughing at the notion that savage Opris could pose a threat to them. When Maul and Mother Talzin kidnapped Dooku, Grievous was trusted enough by Sidious to accompany him to Dathomir to deal with them. Fleeing the Battle of Coruscant, Grievous considered blaming the disaster on Dooku. He felt no regret for Dooku's death at the hands of Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker. Instead, he saw full control over the Separatist forces as advantageous. In a meeting with Darth Sidious and other Separatists, Grievous learned of a new and even more powerful apprentice, but never discovered their identity. Though Sidious had no further use for him, Grievous sought to prove himself worthy of Sidious when he faced Kenobi in battle. Despite being on the same side, Grievous and Asajj Ventress shared a rivalry, a dynamic that suited Count Dooku perfectly. They worked separately rather than together, constantly tested and challenged by Dooku in the same way Sidious tested Grievous. Grievous held a bit of respect for Ventress, praising her style and noting they could be equals, though she dismissed the idea. Unaware that Dooku had turned on Ventress, Grievous openly declared his superiority over her. Both shared a dislike for battle droids and a personal animosity for the Jedi Order. For Grievous, the Republic and the Jedi intervened in his war with the Yamri, siding with the enemy and leaving his people to starvation, while Ventress believed the Jedi had abandoned her master, Ki Narek, on Ratatak. Grievous always disliked Newt Gunray, the Nemoidian viceroy who led the Separatist Council, and Gunray in turn despised Grievous for Count Dooku's preferential treatment of the cyborg. Grievous even threatened to kill Gunray when the Nemoidian dared to publicly criticize him. Gore, his cyborg pet, was one of the few creatures Grievous cared for, and he was dismayed by its death, which further fueled his hatred of the Jedi. He also developed a bond with his medical droid EVA-4D, who knew his secrets and was allowed to criticize him without fear of being torn apart, despite being occasionally yelled at and humiliated. Despite proudly overseeing the Separatists' droid armies, Grievous harbored a disdain for battle droids, especially B-1 models. Like many Separatist commanders, he was frustrated by the droids' limitations, viewing them as incompetent, mass-produced, weak, and ill-suited for the significant tasks assigned to them. Grievous had little regard for these droids and would not hesitate to destroy or abandon them when they failed to meet his high expectations. His dissatisfaction often led to harsh physical punishment, a habit that some legends claim stemmed from his recognition of his own flaws in the droids. Dooku frequently reminded him that the droids were costly and designed to follow orders, not to think independently. Approaching him with a lightsaber in hand when he was in a foul mood was ill-advised for any battle droid. According to legend, Grievous failed to see the similarities between himself and the droids he despised, believing his organic heart made him superior. Given his hatred for battle droids, his mechanized Magna Guards had to be exceptionally tough to meet his demands. He outfitted them with Kaleesh cloaks and head wraps as a tribute to his former companions. Grievous sometimes enlisted Commerce Guild forces for combat on rocky worlds or in urban areas, using OC-9 homing spider droids as heavy armor and siege weaponry, and modified Spelunker probe droids for reconnaissance and sabotage. With his 4 arms, smooth, skull-like metal mask, and clawed feet, Grievous appeared more like a nightmare than a real being. Though more machine than living creature, the amber-slitted eyes that peered through his mask revealed a dreadful malice, showing the heart of an evil warlord beneath the armor. He reacted violently and felt humiliated if anyone mistook him for a droid. Even so, Grievous recognized that his new form was terrifying. He claimed that he underwent a complete body reconstruction to gain an advantage over Jedi, but was sensitive about his upgrades, referring to them as improvements. Legend has it that he believed he could enjoy the benefits of both organic and inorganic life forms, combining the strength and versatility of a droid with the cunning, passion, and emotions of an organic being. On Utapau, Grievous often gloated about how his metal mask concealed his emotions, which was useful when dealing with the Separatist Council, whom he regarded as ignorant beings oblivious to his disdain. Despite his military prowess, legend suggests that Grievous was still unhappy, as altering his body did not satisfy his deeper discontent with his fate. He sought escape and change, but never found peace or completion, expressing his troubles through violence. His anger and vengefulness grew, and he lashed out at anyone he deemed weak. Grievous' pathological hatred for the Jedi drove him to target them relentlessly, seeking revenge for perceived crimes against him and his people. Decades earlier, the intervention of the Galactic Republic and Jedi in a conflict between his people and the Huk had fueled his vendetta. By the time of the Clone Wars, Grievous cared little for the Republic or any political motivation, focusing his energy solely on destroying the Jedi Order. Although devoid of a powerful connection to the Force, Grievous was a highly skilled warrior capable of proficiently wielding lightsabers in combat against his enemies due to the training he received from Count Dooku, a Sith Lord who was once a Jedi Master. Mastering several forms of lightsaber combat, Grievous could quickly adapt to the fighting styles of his opponents. Enhanced by his cybernetics, he often relied on his strength and agility during encounters with Jedi. Grievous specialized in Jar Kai, a lightsaber combat form which contributed to his personalized combat style. Using his additional limbs, he could wield 4 lightsabers simultaneously, overwhelming his opponents. His strategy relied on fear, surprise, and intimidation to undermine his enemy's abilities, and he would withdraw if any of these elements were absent to re-establish them. Throughout his career as a warrior, Grievous clashed with numerous Jedi. Many who faced him on the battlefield were slain by his blade, with few surviving the encounter. Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi faced Grievous several times throughout the Clone Wars, as did Ahsoka Tano, Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, whom Grievous quickly overpowered in their first encounter at Skytop Station. Grievous claimed he could withstand assaults from Jedi strike teams. Members of the Jedi Council struggled to challenge him, including Eth Koth, whom Grievous pushed back before using his Magna Guards to subdue him. He dueled Jedi Master Kit Fisto, losing a hand but holding his own until the Magna Guards surrounded Fisto. Grievous once fought Master Adigalia, defeating and capturing her. His battles with Obi-Wan Kenobi often ended in a stalemate or interruption, occurring on various occasions and locations, including Caliban, the malevolent superweapon battlecruiser, the surrogator cruiser in the Salukami system, Camino, and Kenobi's command ship, the Negotiator, near Florum. He also dueled Master Yoda, managing to hold his own despite Yoda's overwhelming force abilities. Grievous nearly defeated Kenobi multiple times, successfully overpowering him above Utapau, yet Kenobi ultimately slew him on that same planet. Their legendary battle to the death is well remembered. Grievous fought Depa Billaba in at least 2 duels. In the first, he severely injured her, putting her in a 6-month coma, and in the second, despite Billaba severing 2 of his upper hands, he landed a glancing blow on her back. During his mission to capture the Chancellor, Grievous dueled Shakti, eventually gaining the upper hand and knocking her unconscious with electrified cables. Despite frequently clashing with Jedi, Grievous could also face formidable opponents like former Sith assassin Asajj Ventress. In their duel on Datomir, Grievous held his own, kicking Ventress back before getting one limb severed and being thrown to the ground, prompting him to violate their agreement by ordering his droids to intervene. Later, on Sereno, Grievous fought Ventress again during her mission to assassinate Count Dooku. After falling, Grievous overpowered Ventress, pressing his foot against her throat and flinging her to the level below. Earlier in that mission, he fought Quinlan Vos, initially losing his lightsabers and a hand, but eventually overpowering Vos and pushing him back into the wall before being locked in a security center. Grievous also encountered former Sith Lord Maul, whom he deemed too dangerous to let live. They engaged in 2 duels, both ending in a stalemate. Grievous employed a highly unconventional style when battling Jedi, leveraging his 4 arms to his advantage. Despite lacking any force abilities, he compensated with his advanced cybernetics, which endowed him with reflexes and agility that made him a formidable adversary for Jedi. His mechanical limbs allowed him to wield 4 lightsabers simultaneously, spinning his hands so rapidly that they created devastating energy pinwheels. This tactic, one of his favorites, involved spinning his arms to form a lethal shield of lightsaber blades, although many Jedi could counter this strategy. Grievous was also adept at using a blaster in close combat while wielding lightsabers, posing a dual threat even to seasoned Jedi. Grievous could rotate his torso, a skill he used effectively during battles, such as when clones piled on him at the Battle of Salukami, allowing him to throw them off. Though he often engaged foes directly, he wasn't above using underhanded methods. He would employ any means necessary to secure victory, whether through intimidation, dirty tactics, or other strategies. For example, he blocked Nadar Veb's lightsaber with one hand while using another to shoot Veb with a blaster. Against Obi-Wan Kenobi, he used his arms to grab and throw him, attempting to crush him underfoot. Grievous would also send in his Magna Guards to wear down opponents, giving him an advantage in the ensuing battle. Grievous was skilled at blocking lightsaber strikes and deflecting blaster shots and boomers. He could throw his lightsaber at opponents, either by spinning his hand or simply hurling it. His cybernetic enhancements made him incredibly fast, allowing him to crawl and escape quickly when needed. His magnetic, clawed limbs gave him spider-like agility, enabling him to climb walls, cling to starship exteriors, and scale vertical surfaces with ease. Grievous's strength was also enhanced. He could send opponents flying with a single kick, crush armor and skulls with his bare hands and feet, and deliver blows powerful enough to dent metal. His hand-to-hand combat skills far surpassed those of ordinary soldiers, utilizing his multiple arms to lift, throw, choke, and crush enemies. His powerful durasteel feet, sharp and magnetized, were as effective as talons. Grievous's metal body was incredibly durable, resistant to explosions and impacts that would incapacitate most. However, his biological components were vulnerable to fire, though his armor provided protection. His cyborg form allowed him to survive in space and grip onto a ship's hull effectively. When Kenobi kicked him during the Battle of Utapau, Grievous barely felt it, but it hurt Kenobi. Grievous could afford to lose limbs in battle, seemingly unfazed by such injuries which might slow him down but wouldn't stop him. This ability enabled him to face formidable opponents without fear of pain or injury, allowing him to attack without concern for retaliation. Nonetheless, severe damage would require him to return for repairs and medical attention. His armor-plast plating over dulled-down uranium armor provided substantial protection, withstanding significant damage on multiple occasions. He emerged unscathed from a force push that cracked a ship's window, being slammed into a wall, and even being tackled against a ship's window. Crashing his speeder into a herd of Varactyls or passing through Mother Talzin's magic barrier also left him unharmed. Even after being hurled against heavy machinery and losing his last two lightsabers, Grievous retained the ability to escape. On his homeworld, Grievous had already showcased his abilities and established himself as a brilliant military leader, training and commanding his people with expertise. This trait carried over when he became a cyborg general in charge of the separatist droid army. Grievous was also a capable strategist, using his vast army to overwhelm opponents. He acknowledged that clone troopers were superior to his droids and developed a method to defeat both Jedi and clones by deploying a mix of command droids and Magna Guards. The Kaleesh cyborg utilized his strategic skills to prioritize targeting Jedi generals, boarding their ships and capturing them, posing such a significant threat to the Jedi Council that they dispatched their best Jedi to counter him. Grievous led a destructive campaign in the Outer Rim, crushing multiple legions and fleets along his path. During the Battle of Botawui, he led his fleet through the planetary ring, using asteroids to defend against surprise attacks and successfully damaging a Republic cruiser until Skywalker deciphered his strategy. He could predict the Republic's movements and foresee Anakin's tactics during the Battle of Salukami. At the Battle of Kamino, Grievous tricked Republic forces, taking heavy casualties but fooling even Anakin, though Obi-Wan Kenobi eventually uncovered his plan. Later, he led his fleets to victory against Kenobi's forces, seizing his flagship without losing a single capital ship. Grievous was adept at calculating odds based on experience, as shown at the Battle of Zanbar, where his army crushed Maul's Shadow Collective in 2 consecutive battles and nearly achieved victory at Ord Mantell. He recognized that Maul had yet to deploy warships during the battle on Ord Mantell, and when their dreadnought was hit, he understood they had been trapped. He successfully lured Depa Billaba into a trap on Maigito, cutting off her exits and surrounding her with droids. Grievous could directly command his battle droids with antennae built into his head and access systems via comlinks in his cybernetic setup, directing the Invisible Hand's defense. Grievous earned a reputation as a skilled pilot, flying a customized Bell-Bulb 22 starfighter known as the Soulless One. He was skilled enough to evade and escape Anakin Skywalker's starfighter, avoiding laser fire and achieving hyperspace without a single hit, demonstrating his superior piloting skills. However, Anakin nearly shot him down, but a piece of shrapnel caused his fighter to veer off course. Despite the Soulless One's advantages, Grievous often used it to flee from danger rather than engage in battle, recognizing that while he was an exceptional fighter on the ground, his piloting skills, though significant, were no match for those of a Jedi.